So we're here in Keith Morris's studio. This is where you edit, this is where you work a lot of the time when you're not outdoors taking photographs. And we're going to have a look at some of the incredible photographs that he's actually taken. Because I think this is so important that we're not just talking about creative process, that we actually get to see a bit of it as well.
Okay.
So this photo here was taken exactly this day, a year ago.
We're now on the 12th of December 2018. This was taken on the 12th of December 2017. Starlings in the snow. One of the Welsh names for starlings is Adar or Eira, snowbirds. So it's kind of appropriate.
Beautiful.
That they're snowbirds because they appear in winter, traditionally when it's snowing. So I'm just going to throw some images here now of the starlings.
Love that one.
That I've done over the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, I've been photographing them for about 20 years, maybe more. This is a kind of selection that I did for the TEDx talk that I did at the Art Centre recently. So I just went through the last couple of years' work and pulled out a random selection, literally a random selection of the starlings, which kind of feeds into the point I was making about, there's always something new to see. So even if I'm going back to the pier virtually every day and photographing the starlings, there is a huge range of different images that I'm making of the starlings and the starling experience. People looking at the starlings is part of the starling experience. It draws people from all over the UK, the fact that they have this murmuration.
Is it quite unusual then, the murmuration?
No, there are murmurations all around the country, but what's unusual is that it's an urban murmuration. It's a murmuration that you can get physically close to. Most murmurations happen in marshlands and moorlands and in woodlands and in forests where you can't physically get close to them. There are a handful of urban roosts, mostly around seaside piers, Blackpool Pier, Brighton Pier, Aberystwyth Pier. You'll hear them. I mean, the word murmuration refers to the sound that the bird's wings make. It's this murmuring sound. So it's like a kind of roar of a distant waterfall getting closer and closer and closer. And the birds are completely silent as they fly. They don't make a sound at all until they actually go down to roost, to settle on the legs and the beams underneath the pier. And once they start chattering, then it's really vociferous and raucous until late at night. I mean, I've been back there 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and they're still chattering.
Really?
God knows when they stop, because they chat until late at night. And if you go there then in the morning, before dawn, they're chattering already. So they must stop chattering at some point, but I've never been there like at 2 o'clock in the morning to test this theory.
Love this one. I love the colours there, just that power of the sunset. And we have such an unusual sunset there. I mean, it almost looks kind of Asian in just the colour of the
possibly, yeah. I mean, Aber is famous for many things, and its sunsets are one of them. The fact that you get great perspectives on a sunset from Aberystwyth, because you can always kind of put things between you and the sunset. A sunset, just a sunset, is really boring. Sunsetting over the sea, nothing, that's a rubbish picture. You need something in the picture to kind of make it work. And here you've got 3 things. You've got the starlings, great, and you've got the silhouette of the pier, brilliant, and then you've got 2 people on paddleboards there. So you've actually got kind of an emotional connection with the scene.
So you're always talking about finding new locations.
Yeah, finding new places to physically be as the starlings appear. So I'm either really close up to them with a wide-angle lens underneath the pier, or I can be standing like a mile away with a really long lens, which kind of compresses the perspective on things. So sometimes, it's a creative challenge, so that you're not simply repeating yourself time after time after time. You are making a conscious effort to give some variety to the kind of style and approach that you're taking to the pictures. And sometimes you get lucky. You get some people in the frame. Well, people in the frame really does make it kind of stand out. I mean, it becomes what's called a punctum in a picture. So if I got people and the sunset, and a starling in silhouette, I'm pretty happy.
And is this a part of the creative process that you were describing earlier, where it's not just a case of being inspired and doing something, but it's about actually making it a job, making it
Yeah, you have to, you know, kind of work consciously on making a picture. I don't take pictures, I make pictures. So I'm, you know, very aware of the elements that are going in here. So I've got this birds coming across here in a diagonal. I have this kind of lovely graphic shape here. Then I have these people there, and I have a boat. I mean, these aren't.
Yeah, and you've got a couple of birds kind of coming.
Yeah, yeah, you know, these aren't accidental. I mean, I have deliberately chosen this picture because of those elements. I mean, if the elements weren't there, then the picture doesn't quite work as well. So I am consciously creating images using techniques. The technique I've used here, I've used differential focus, where I've got sharp focus on the birds, on the legs here, and then out of focus dots in the background. So you're using all sorts of camera techniques, you're using all sorts of compositional techniques, you're using all sorts of using the light in certain ways to make the image say what you want it to say. Because, you know, photography is a medium. It's a way of communicating. And you can only communicate what you're actually putting into that message. If you're not putting anything into the picture, then how can anybody else get anything out of that picture?
I love that. If you're not putting anything into the picture, how can anybody else get anything out of it?
Yeah.
That's lovely. And it also gives people the license as well to be able to take from the photo what they feel.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they can take whatever they want from the picture. I mean, in this picture here, for instance, you know, there's a shape there. I mean, people will see all sorts of different shapes.
What do you see in that?
No idea. I mean, I could answer in a very kind of phallic way, but I probably shouldn't. But yeah, you tell me, Freya, what shapes do you see? What does that remind you of?
I almost saw a turtle. So this is the head of the turtle, and then the shell, and then his legs kind of paddling.
Okay.
But it's loose.
I can also possibly see a very fat witch on a broomstick.
Oh yes, flying that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely see the witch.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, whatever. I mean, people. You know, we are evolutionarily conditioned to make sense of random patterns. I mean, that's how we kind of grew up, how we evolved. So, you know, and what people see, what patterns people see in these random shapes is very illuminating.
Do you think that kind of focusing in on these moments and really kind of being present for what you're seeing, do you think that helps you be present as a lifestyle? To kind of like almost like, because a lot of spiritualities practice that, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's all this guff about mindfulness.
Yeah, it's very.
I mean, I've been mindful for the
moment.
last 40 years. I think you can't be a photographer if you're not mindful. You have to be, you know, in the moment. You have to be, you know, aware. So I've been mindful for a lot longer than people have been talking about mindfulness. I quite like this picture. Again, it looks busy, but it's actually a very simple picture. It's simply a picture of the starling, and it was shot in fog, which is why you have this kind of regression of the birds getting fainter and fainter and fainter. You know, they're just getting further and further away in the fog, which I like.
Have you got a favourite photograph of all time?
My favourite photograph of all time will be the one I take tomorrow. Is my stock answer to that question. Because if I had a favourite photograph of all time, I'd stop photographing.
Because you'd be done.
I'd be done.
There'd be nothing else
Job
to do.
done. Yeah.
So your favourite photograph is always the one
stop.
you will take tomorrow.
I will take a better photograph tomorrow. Which is why I keep going back. Partly why I'm going back to Starlings. I will take a better picture.
So your favourite photograph of the Starlings will be the one that you take tomorrow.
Hopefully.
With whatever tomorrow's weather or light or whatever the Starlings do.
Yeah.
You'll be present.
Whatever.
I love that.
So you have to work that way, because if you thought you'd already taken your best picture, then really there's no point carrying on.
So Humans of Aberystwyth is one of the projects you've been working on.
Yes.
Mirror image to Humans of New York, but obviously
kind of. Yeah. Well, it was
smaller town.
inspired by the humans of New York, which is obviously kind of the original idea for all the other humans of projects that are happening around the world. But this is the only one happening in a town, and the only one happening through the medium of Welsh. We are a bilingual Welsh-English project, myself and a woman called Catherine Ellan Taylor, who does interviews. So every week, on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, we go out and we just talk to various random people, literally random people on the street in Aberystwyth, about who they are, why they're in Aberystwyth. They haven't got to be residents of Aber. No, as long as they are, in Aber, they are part of the Humans Project. So, yeah, we go around, whatever the weather, rain or shine. And mostly people are happy to speak to us. Sometimes people are busy, obviously, we can't kind of compel them to talk to us. And then, they are often, unsure and uncertain at first. But once they start talking, they tend to open up, and everybody has something to say. Sometimes more interesting than others, but there's always a story there. So we've been doing it now for, like I say, 3 years, maybe more, almost 4 years. So we've interviewed hundreds of people in various places around the town. This is a Chinese guy who was training to be a footballer, and that was his dad. So every day they were down the Avenue Plasgreg, and he was kind of working his kid really hard.
Do projects like this, which are sort of self-motivated and self-inspired and inspired by other people or other things that are going on, are they kind of easier to engage with creatively? Creatively. Do they inspire you? Do they add more to kind of?
They're just different. They're just nice to have. I mean, I work in so many different ways that it's good to have a different approach every now and again, which is why I do a lot of images in my studio that are not commercial. So, and that's just another way of being. You need to have different outlets for particular kind of interests and tendencies that you have. If I was just doing my commercial newspaper work every day, I'd go bonkers. And what's one of the advantages of being in a small town like Aberystwyth is that you can't do just one type of work all the time, because there's not enough of any one type of work to keep you going. So you have to be quite varied in the skill set that you have to offer.
So do you feel that you have to always play in the rules, or do you break them a lot of the time?
You need to know what the rules are. So when I was starting off as a photographer, I was religiously writing down the details of every shot I'd taken,
Really?
What the aperture was, what the film speed was, what the shutter speed was, what the focal length was. And then, looking back at the pictures and comparing what I was seeing with what technically I had done, so that I had an understanding of what it takes to make a picture look a certain way. And then once you've learned that, and you've kind of forgotten to have to look at your fingers all the time when you're photographing, the camera becomes then just an extension of your mind and your eye, and it's not something which you are consciously wrestling with. Then you can start making pictures, and then you can start forgetting the rules consciously, but they're always there at the back of your head, underpinning what you're doing.
So this is some of the Aberystwyth photos that you've taken in the 1980s?
1980s, yeah, when everything was in black and white, obviously. Working on medium format film, as you can tell from the kind of shape of the negatives here. So that size negative, 6x7 centimetre negative on the big Mamiya RB67 camera, which weighs half a ton. Yeah, so these are all kind of photographs of buildings and places in Aberystwyth. This is the Barn Centre, where I had my studio for 10 years. A ramshackle building, which is where Domino's Pizza is there now. That's an estate, solicitors, and that's where the job centre is now.
But this must be a very connecting thing that older people and people who lived through this generation actually remember it.
Yeah,
I know.
Well, I mean, you haven't got to be that old. I mean, this is only like 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So you haven't got to be in your 70s or 80s to remember Aberystwyth as it was. But it is a way of generating people's memories, responses to places. And this is the end of North Parade. All these buildings have gone. That's gone. That building there's gone. That school, hospital is gone. So landscapes and urban settings that you think are kind of permanent, are really ephemeral. So a lot of these buildings. I didn't photograph the buildings thinking that they're going to be demolished. I just photographed the buildings because they looked like interesting places, or I just photographing the street scenes. And now I find that they have a particular interest, and it's interesting the way that the meaning of a photograph changes over time. And that's something which you thought was a contemporary image, in a few short years becomes an historical artifact. So meaning is not locked into a picture. Meaning changes.
I love that. So the photograph actually continues to have life and continues to change and develop.
Yeah.
Over time.
It's not locked. It's not static.
What are some of the challenges that you've overcome in terms of living this kind of creative life? You don't have a 9-to-5 job. What are some of the challenges that you found there, and how did you kind of get past them?
That's a very good question. I haven't got an answer to that. The challenge is just the big challenge is just making sure you're making enough bloody money to stay alive, because there's no point being the best creative person in the world if you can't live, if you can't feed yourself.
If you're cold and you're hungry, you're not going to be very creative.
Yeah, I don't want to be cold and hungry. I've been cold and hungry. It's not nice. I'd rather be warm and well fed. Thank you very much.
Do you find any of the isolation hard? Because obviously you're working alone quite a bit. You're editing.
I love being alone. I love being alone. This is I'm happy as a sandboy alone. I mean, that's partly why I'm a photographer, because photographers, by and large, work quite independently. I'm not a gregarious person. I don't like groups. I don't like people. I like people, but I don't like having to be with people in order to actually function. Yeah. I can function quite happily.
You like your own company?
By myself, yeah. I mean, I like being with people. I like photographing people, but I'm not. I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world if I had to spend the rest of my life on a desert island. I could be quite happy doing that.
As long as you had a camera.
Yeah, or some way of making a picture. I mean, I'd probably scratch things in the sand if I had to.
So you've mentioned that photography is about those moment-by-moment glimpses and capturing of something that's special in that exact second.
Yeah, I mean, photography for me is a way of just crystallising small moments in time, small fleeting instances out of the whole kind of spectrum of experience.
Amazing. And photography as a value, as a creative process, you don't want to be called an artist, but what does it mean to you to take these photos? You spent most of your life taking millions upon millions of pictures.
I mean, I see myself as a person who is just documenting and remembering things on behalf of other people. It's not so much about what I'm doing, it's actually what the images that I make and what kind of responses they generate in the people who are looking at them.
I love that, because earlier you called yourself a treasure hunter, and what was the Shakespeare quote?
A picker-up of unconsidered trifles.
A picker-up of unconsidered trifles. That's amazing. Keith, thank you so much for chatting with us today.
You're welcome, no problem.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.